right, folks, it's the big interview of the week here on the SHR Media Networks and the Evan Miller Report. Joining us in her first exclusive radio interview since she left Congress is former Congresswoman Michele Bachmann of the great state of Minnesota. And I know the way you guys say it in Minnesota, Michele, probably is a lot different than we folks here in Southern California usually say it.
Well, as I always say, it is the accent everyone wished they had. It's called Minnesota.
See, and I will never, ever say that right. Being from the West Coast, we thank you for joining us. Quick story before we discuss politics. I happened to meet you twice. Once at an Eagle Forum event in San Diego, and then once during the last presidential campaign in 2012 when you were running for president over at the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I happened to be one of the audience members in the audience, and when you were speaking about one of your primaries, I happened to be the one who broke the trend and decided to say that you would be winning one of the primaries over there, and the NBC people over there were not too kind to me in saying that you were going to win that primary, but sure enough, you won that primary that you were talking about, that Jay was bringing up, and so shows to tell you that the Evan Miller Report can predict certain elections.
Well, congratulations, batting 1,000.
Yes, absolutely. We try our best here, and of course, everybody wants to know. The first question I got to ask you is, will you be running for president again?
Well, not today. I don't have a plan right now to do that. I'm definitely involved, definitely weighing in. I just was in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and I meet with different presidential candidates on a somewhat regular basis, more informal. As someone who's gone through this before, I'm very keen on making sure that a Republican wins in 2016. If there's anything that Barack Obama has shown us over the last 6+ years, it is the power and breadth of the presidency. And he has shown us, he has taken that power beyond all possible imagination that our founders had of what that power would be like, but we certainly can't allow a Hillary Clinton to have that power for the next 8 years.
Well, you bring up Hillary Clinton. So glad you did. She's in a bit of a controversy. Not exactly the right way to start off a presidential campaign. You can certainly speak to this, Michele. What's your opinions of her this current email scandal going on with her and the State Department when she was Secretary of State?
Well, I think it's very likely that Hillary Clinton has committed a criminal act because she was subject to federal record-keeping requirements. I think it's patently obvious that she intentionally chose to evade those regulations. And in light of that, I think she's in real trouble. We just found out from Time magazine today that Hillary hired lawyers. Her lawyers put together a list of names and key search words. Through those 62,000 emails, they went through, they hit a button to conduct a search, and anything that didn't fit those names or those key words were deleted. The emails that she deleted were not opened. No eyes put it. This is what the report says. No eyes looked at them. So what Hillary told us in her Kabuki Theater press conference on Tuesday is that 100% of all government emails were handed over, and 100% of personal emails were deleted. So that's pixie dust that she's trying to have all of us believe that there was 100% infallibility on the search term list of her lawyers. It's absolutely impossible that that happened. And so clearly, now Hillary has put herself in a position where there will have to be a criminal probe, and the Justice Department, in my opinion, has no other option. They'll have to open up a criminal probe on the former Secretary of State, and her private email server will have to be subpoenaed, and forensics will have to be completed on it.
Now, you running as president, even the people on the GOP side, along with the liberals, went after you. You went through a presidential process. Of course, your emails, as your time as Minnesota senator and as congresswoman, were looked at every detail. Every detail. Take us through a little bit how through a government person's email, and how that can be easily scrutinized, and how easily someone can mix up their email address so easily and break federal law.
Well, I think, I'm not an expert on the federal records requirements, and I don't pretend to be. The rules that the Obama administration had for their own departments were very clear. The secretary knew those rules. She emailed the employees under her about those rules and admonished them to follow them, to the point where even the U.S. ambassador from Kenya was removed in part for failing to follow the record-keeping requirements on emails. So this is well beyond hypocrisy on Secretary of State Clinton's part. I believe that now she may have moved into a federal criminal jurisdiction, and the question really now is whether the Obama Justice Department will apply equal treatment under the law to the former Secretary of State. We've seen instances where it appears that there are politically selected prosecutions of people who are not in the favor of the White House. For instance, Senator Menendez and others who have been selected by this White House for prosecution. But in this case, Hillary Clinton cannot be above the law. She has to be held to it, just like anyone else. And so she's certainly not starting out on the happiest foot with the beginning of her, what appears to be a very bumpy ride on her way to the White House.
Okay. And I want to bring up you were on the Intelligence Committee as your time as Congresswoman, and our D.C. Bureau put the question to me to ask you, if you had the chance to question Hillary Clinton on Benghazi, what were some of the questions you would have asked her? Because obviously there is a string of emails related to this scandal with Libya that aren't even available. And they, so far today, according to a report by the AP, Chairman Trey Gowdy, who was heading that Benghazi committee, has now subpoenaed Hillary Clinton and her emails. He wants to know where those emails are. What's your opinion on that?
Well, again, I think that it's very instructive what Time Magazine reported today, the fact that Hillary Clinton's lawyers put together a list that has names and keywords on it, and based upon that list and an arrogant presumption of perfect infallibility, they conducted a search and deleted all emails that didn't have that list. Clearly, if I was on the Benghazi Select Committee, or if I was on the Intelligence Committee, I would want to know what names were on the list that the lawyers put together and what were the key words that were on the list when they ran the search. Were the words Benghazi in that list? Was the word video in that list? Hillary Clinton, just because of Benghazi alone, in my mind, is disqualified as commander-in-chief. This was her big test, and she failed it. She failed it both in making sure that those under her employ in the State Department would be kept free from harm. And by that, I have personally seen the notebook that had all of the threats in it regarding Benghazi. There were thousands and thousands of threat warnings that year in 2012 about the dangerous conditions in Benghazi. All of our allied partners had pulled out their teams and their crews because they knew how dangerous this was. Our State Department people asked for more security in 2012 because of the dangerous conditions and because the Benghazi compound had already been attacked numerous times in 2012. Not only were those pleas for help ignored by Hillary Clinton, she also pulled out security that was there. So they were less secure on September 11th, 2012 than even before when the compound was under attack earlier during the year. The second point is that she did not have a plan in place to rescue people in one of the most dangerous parts of the world. So we know now when the attack happened, we were told later that it would take well over 20 hours to even mount any sort of a rescue effort. Well, that was unrealistic, and she allowed that to stand. We don't know where Hillary Clinton was that evening. We don't know who she called, whether or not she did speak to the commander-in-chief, where the President of the United States was. And then we need to know why afterwards she was one of the chief people who continued to perpetuate the lie that it was a video that started the Benghazi problem, when in fact it was a terrorist assault. Hillary Clinton knew literally within minutes of the assault that this was an attack that was underway. It didn't take long for her to know. She knew immediately. She was in Washington, D.C., and no one should forget, in 2008, Hillary Clinton ran a famous ad about a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. And in the ad, the phone rang, and the question was asked, who will answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning? And she tried to infer that she would be better prepared to deal with an emergency than Barack Obama. Well, the phone call came at the 3 o'clock hour, only it was in the 3 o'clock hour in the afternoon, not in the middle of the night, and that was Washington, D.C. time, where Hillary Clinton was when Benghazi broke out. So she had every advantage at her fingertips, and yet we saw 4 innocent Americans die, and we saw a cover-up of gargantuan, obvious proportions, and now the jig is up. So she has a lot to answer for regarding Benghazi, but far more than that, now it appears that she's involved in a potential criminal violation and cover-up of what we would call evidence in the destruction of emails on her private server.
Unbelievable. And before we wrap up the part about Benghazi, what is your opinion of your former colleague, Trey Gowdy? How do you think he is handling the investigation, and do you think he is moving swiftly enough in handling that investigation?
Well, I would refer your listeners to a couple of columns written by my friend Andy McCarthy. Andy McCarthy writes for National Review Online. He also writes for PJ Media. And Andy has been talking about the glacial speed that the committee has been running at. The committee, according to Andy, has been constituted for about 10 months. And the purpose of the committee is not to run a criminal investigation. Congress is prohibited from running a criminal investigation. Only the judicial branch can do that, and that's through the, only the Department of Justice can conduct a criminal investigation, and that would be through the executive branch. That must be done. What Congress can do is investigate facts and conduct oversight, and that's primarily a political procedure. I don't mean political in the sense of being pejorative, Republicans against Democrats. What I mean is that the legislative branch has the duty to properly investigate the areas over which it has jurisdiction. For instance, the State Department, whether it is Foreign Affairs or whether it is Judiciary or whether it's the Intelligence Committee. They provide the funding and they make the policy, and they properly need to determine whether the money was spent the way Congress authorized, and second, whether policies were in fact followed. That needs to be done. That's an inherently public process. There's been very few hearings that have been held, and in my opinion, that those hearings should be held soon and quickly, putting all of the evidence on the table for the public to see, and then calling out on the Department of Justice to conduct its own civil or criminal probe.
Certainly, we're going to keep an eye on the Benghazi situation. I don't think this is going to be over. It's certainly going to take a long time, and I think that will be the crucifix, so to speak, on the Obama administration and what is going to finally be on President Obama's legacy. Don't you agree?
Well, I think President Obama's legacy clearly will be the establishment of lawlessness in the United States. In nearly every realm, the president has far overstepped his boundaries as listed in the Constitution of the United States under Article 2. And I think most egregiously recently we have seen that overstepping in the realm of the president issuing executive amnesty to illegal aliens, wherein he is fabricating the creation of work permits for over 5 million illegal aliens in the United States. Once the president has done that, and once the GOP Congress fully funded those 5 million plus work permits, now we will see illegal aliens be granted Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, in addition to the work permits that will allow them access to Medicare benefits, Medicaid benefits, Social Security disability benefits, in addition to numerous other benefits that they'll now be able to take advantage of. Does anyone believe that someone armed with a work permit, a driver's license, and a Social Security number won't have access to the voting booth? In my opinion, this was nothing more than a taxpayer-subsidized voter drive for the Democrat Party for 2016. And I think that clearly that's what the president was trying to do, because in light of Ferguson and all of the racial tensions in the United States today, in parts stoked by the policies of President Obama, I don't believe for a moment we're going to see poll workers risk the judgment of the Department of Justice by being accused of racial profiling, by asking anyone to show proof of citizenship papers when they go to file for voter registration. If they have a valid driver's license, if they have a Social Security number, if they have a work permit, I highly doubt any poll worker will be asking for proof of citizenship papers. And I believe that is why we have the potential of seeing an additional 5 million illegal aliens who could be voting in the 2016 election. And that could be enough to throw the election to the Democrat nominee, presumably of which is Hillary Clinton. And to see Hillary Clinton gain office through the votes of potentially 5 million illegal aliens who are not authorized to vote would be truly a travesty and a shame in our system.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, because I think your prediction already came true, because 15 illegal aliens here in the state of California, after a federal probe earlier this week, Michelle, were given amnesty from deportation today, and they are known criminals as well. So they could be potential voters in the upcoming 2016 election. So you certainly know your stuff when it comes to the illegal immigration issue. Now let's move on to D.C. politics briefly. And first question I want to ask you here, a lot of people were shocked that you decided not to rerun for another term and decided to step down last year before the midterm elections last year. Was that because of the gridlock in Washington, D.C.? And I'm not only speaking to Democrats, I'm speaking to Republicans on this issue, because you know what, I've told this my audience many a times that I'm no longer a Republican, that the Republican Party left me, I didn't leave them, and I decided to become a legal nonpartisan here in the state of California. If there was any other state, I would have become a libertarian, because the GOP is currently not the grand old party anymore. They're surely not showing their conservative roots, especially with Speaker Boehner.
Well, I want to encourage people to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I regularly Facebook and Twitter, and also I have a PAC called Michele PAC, and I just put a mailing out today for Michele PAC, and I encourage people to go to michelepac.com. And I talked about that very issue, that it only took 2 terms for the Whigs to lose as a political party and for the Republican Party to take dominance over the Whigs. I don't think any party should get too comfortable. A lot of people are very, very upset by the fact that the Republican Party, which now controls both the Senate and the House, decided they were not going to fight President Obama on his illegal, unconstitutional executive amnesty. In fact, they completely caved and they fully funded Obama's agenda through 2015. So consider this. When Barack Obama came in power, he had a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate, and a Democrat president. That's how we were able to see Obamacare and Dodd-Frank go through. Then we had the House of Representatives flipped and it went into Republican hands. That seemed like we would be able to stop a certain amount of damage happening with a Republican House, but we were told that the Republicans only controlled 1/2 of 1/3 of government. In order to tell conservative members of Congress to be quiet, don't expect much, we don't have enough power. Now when voters gave Republicans control of the Senate, once again we're told we don't have enough numbers, we don't have enough Republican senators to overcome a filibuster, there is a Democrat president, the president has his rights, and we've got to step out of the way. And so now Republicans are busy confirming people like Loretta Lynch is the new Attorney General. She did pass out of a committee in the United States Senate and the Judiciary Committee after she already said she believed Obama's unconstitutional amnesty was just fine with her. In other words, this is going to be Eric Holder Part 2 all over again. So Republicans are not pushing back in any way, and I think that Republicans need to recognize there could be a tremendous backlash against them if they don't properly act as goaltenders and stop what President Obama is illegally doing. So throughout his 8 years, even with Republicans controlling the Senate and the House, Obama still may have his entire agenda 100% fully funded. To me, that's a travesty.
Is that why you decided to step down as Congresswoman, because of all this gridlock? You couldn't get anything done? And you know what? You were known as the Queen of the Tea Party. People have said that many of times. You were the first one to stand up and say, if we take control of Congress, we will repeal Obamacare. But you know what? You're the only person who was coming out saying that. And you know what? For people who say that you broke your promise, you can't exactly tell Michele Bachmann that she broke her promise if she was the only one who was saying that. She needs the whole party behind her. And the likes of the House leadership, the likes of John Boehner, and even former Majority Leader Eric Cantor, they weren't behind you on it. And why do you think Eric Cantor was voted out of office and the likes of Dave Bratt took over his state?
Well, one of the main reasons why I decided to run for President of the United States was to repeal Obamacare. I saw that there weren't very many people on Capitol Hill, and that included Republicans, who had the backbone to actually stand up to all of the special interest groups in Obamacare and repeal that bill and fight for our great health care system. Despite its flaws, America still has the greatest healthcare system in the world, but we're losing it fast because of Obamacare. I could regale your listeners with stories, but we don't have time to do that. I chose not to run. I've given 16 years of my life full time to politics. 2, as a mom at home, we had 5 biological kids and 23 foster kids that we raised. And our foster kids brought a lot of nonsense home in their backpacks. And I was incensed at what I saw. We homeschooled our biological children, and we had them in private school. But in the state of Minnesota, we were prohibited legally from putting our foster children in anything other than the public school. And I was just floored by some of the things that I saw come home in the backpack. And I decided as their mom to fight for my foster children's education. That's really what got me into politics. I wasn't interested in politics. I was a federal tax litigation attorney, and I had enough to do on my plate with all the kids and a business that we started, and I started a K-12 charter school. I was a busy person. I didn't need to run for politics. But I was so incensed at what was happening to our nation's education system that I burrowed in, I found out what the problems were, and I alerted people all across the state of Minnesota. We're a very liberal state, Al Franken, for instance, is our U.S. Senator. But in my state, we became the only state that was able to throw out our federal education national standards. And we did that because real people cared about their kids. Liberals and conservatives cared about their kids, and they said, not with my kid you don't. We're not going to teach them this politically correct mash. And so we had a temporary victory, at least in Minnesota. I did that for 2 years, and then I was encouraged to run for the Minnesota State Senate, and I served there for 6 years, and then in Congress for 8 years. So I spent 16 years of my life pouring myself out in public service. And I just felt like I do believe in a citizen legislature, and I do believe in at least self-imposed term limits. And so I pulled out to give someone else a chance, but that doesn't mean that I've left the fight. That's why I'm on your radio show tonight. I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday working on some matters. I'm in Florida today. I'll be giving a big speech on education tomorrow in Florida. I'm continuing to weigh in. I'm continuing to fight on these issues. I'm just doing it from a different perch.
And you know what, Michele? I'm glad you are doing that. And by the way, that is over in Naples, Florida, speaking at the Eagle Forum luncheon tomorrow. And you're going to be there with the Honorable Phyllis Schlafly, the CEO of Eagle Forum. And please tell her Mr. Miller said hello. I've had the honor of interviewing her on many occasions. And you know what? I can understand your frustration why you decided to leave Congress. You can get more done as a private citizen, Michele, than you could have as a congresswoman. At least with the current leadership in Congress, I think I'm not the only American here, along with yourself, who is frustrated with the likes of D.C. We tell our D.C. politicians, hey, we want this done. We want you to fight for us. And yet they're not fighting for us.
Well, I think you're echoing the frustration that so many people see, because many, many great people sacrifice to volunteer on campaigns and support local campaigns, and they send people to Washington, D.C., and there are good people there. I want to vouch for there are many, many good people who are sacrificially serving in Congress. There's just not enough. And the problem is, a lot of times Congress can be likened to a big junior high. It's a lot of peer pressure that you get in Washington, and it's very, very expensive to run for office, and money talks. So between money, between the pressure that leadership puts on members, between the negative ads that get run against an individual, at a certain point, people just decide it's not worth it. I'm not going to fight anymore. But for me, I knew why I was running. I knew that I wasn't going to make a career out of being in Washington. I knew who I was. I knew what I believed, and I had a titanium spine. It doesn't mean that I don't know how to compromise. You can't be married 37 years and not know how to compromise. Anybody knows how to compromise, but we're way beyond compromising now. We're talking about a complete and total abdication of our Constitution. And if we abdicate our Constitution, we will no longer look like the gift that the United States was to our generation. And it's changing fast. And we all love America. We all love the freedoms that it's given to us. But in order to continue this life, we have to continue the constitutional freedom. And President Obama chose not to do that. And for some inexplicable reason, the Republicans decided to leave their white gloves on and not fight. This was the time of any time to take off the white gloves and put on brass knuckles and boxing gloves and fight to retain control of our borders and our sovereignty and our Constitution. And instead, unfortunately, the Republicans, together with the Democrats, chose to fund Obama's unconstitutional, illegal executive amnesty. And it will totally change the United States forever. That's not racist to say that. It is to say that American workers deserve to keep their American jobs. Because with 5 million new laborers in the workforce, 5 million new people will be fighting for American jobs, which means employers will bid down the wages and bid down the benefits. So American workers, the ones who are paying the taxes for illegal aliens, they're the ones who are going to be hurt the most. And the children of natural-born Americans will also be the ones who are hurt the most. We have every right to control our borders. We have every right to decide who comes in and when they come in. There is no other nation on earth that is as generous with immigration as the United States. already today we allow in over 1 million legal aliens every year, over 1 million. No other country allows that many people in through immigration. In fact, if you add up the amount of immigration that every other country in the world does, all countries combined, they don't even allow in every country of the world added together as many as the United States does in 1 year. So we're beyond generous. Now the American taxpayer is being taken for a ride as a fool and a chump because we have to provide Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security benefits, Social Security disability payments, in all likelihood food stamps, Obama phones, the whole rest, the gravy train. Obama's rolling out that carpet of entitlements, and the American worker who's suffering already with lower wages is going to have to pay that freight.
Can you stay on with a couple more minutes? I've already spoke to our D.C. Bureau. The Exceptional Conservative Show, for those of you tuning in at the top of the hour, will be delayed, but Ken McClinton has graciously given us some extra time with you. Michele, do you have a couple more minutes to talk with us?
I wish I did, but I have an event here that I need to go to, but I've really enjoyed my time with you, and I just wish you the best, and I wish your audience the best as well.
All right. Well, keep us informed, and we'd love you to come back on sometime to analyze what is going on in D.C., because I don't think anybody knows it better than you. Real quick, before you go, what is your opinion on the current Iran negotiations going on in Switzerland? Real quick, if you can briefly give us a brief summary of what you think about what's going on.
I sat on the Intelligence Committee. There are only 4 nations in the world that the United States designates as state sponsors of terror: Cuba, Syria, Sudan, and Iran. Of those 4 nations, Iran clearly is the most egregious violator of terrorist acts in the world. This is the one nation that President Obama can't do enough. He is tripping over himself right now to make sure that Iran has the ability and capacity to develop a nuclear weapon. And it isn't just one weapon, it is multiple nuclear weapons. And as we speak, Iran already has control over the capital of Yemen, the capital of Lebanon, the capital of Iraq, Baghdad, and also obviously their own capital, as well as Damascus, the capital of Syria. Iran is intent on being the dominant player in the Middle East. If we see Iran, which is responsible for murdering over 1/3 of all of our American soldiers in Iraq, you heard me right, Iran is responsible for murdering 1/3 of all of our U.S. soldiers in Iraq. If they are this dangerous with backing terrorism now when they don't have a nuclear bomb, imagine what they will do when they have it. We don't even have to imagine, because their leader has already tweeted and stated publicly that once they have a nuclear bomb, their intent is to annihilate the Jewish state. They intend to kill every Jew on the planet, and they're going to begin with killing the Jews in Israel. But they also intend to use that nuclear bomb against the United States. In no universe can I imagine any U.S. president ever desiring to make sure that Iran has a nuclear weapon. And Iran will have a nuclear weapon. I was in the chamber last week when Benjamin Netanyahu came to speak to Congress. As a former member of Congress, I have lifetime privileges of being in the chamber. I was the first person, as a matter of fact, who greeted the Prime Minister when he walked through the double doors to give his speech. I stood right by the doors. I greeted him. I thanked him for being there, and I was one of the last people to talk to him before he left the chamber. He said it rightly. He said this agreement that President Obama is desperate to have for some odd reason, this agreement will pave the way for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And they'll be able to have a nuclear weapon in somewhere from 6 months to 1 year's time. Not enough time for the United States to gear up and have a defense. Why do I say that? I say that because President Obama is in the process of hollowing out our U.S. military. He is taking our Navy back to 1917 levels of preparedness. He is taking our Army back to pre-World War II, 1942 levels of preparedness, and he's stripping down our United States Air Force as well. I spoke to experts in December who said that today we have the capability of taking out Iranian nuclear hardware, but potentially by the year 2016, next year, that window may close, and the United States may have so hollowed ourselves out militarily that we may not have the capability of even taking out the Iranian nuclear program. What President Obama is doing to this nation is treasonous as far as I am concerned, and this is more than a bad deal. And I'll end this, and then I need to go. At the White House Christmas at the White House Christmas party, I knew this would be the last time that I would have the occasion to see the president in my capacity as a member of Congress. And so I decided, rather than just having light chit-chat, I would have a substantive conversation. So after we took our pictures as families, I turned to the president and I said, Mr. President, you need to bomb the Iranian nuclear hardware, and you need to do it soon before they get the nuclear weapon. Otherwise, the course of world history will change. And then the president said to me in a patronizing, condescending tone, well, Michele, it's really not that simple. And then he kind of waved his hand a little bit like I was a know-nothing, and he said, but that's okay. And I thought to myself, you know, Mr. President, it's been publicly reported that you miss over 60% of your daily intelligence briefings. I went to my intelligence briefings. As a member of the Intelligence Committee, I put extra time into reading intelligence products so that I would know what was going on. And so I responded to the president, no, Mr. President, this is your watch. And if Iran has a nuclear weapon and bombs under your watch, the course of world history will change. Merry Christmas, Mr. President. And then I left and I walked away. Obviously, the president and I completely disagree on this. But if 535 members of the House and the Senate with one voice would say to the president, we're way beyond sanctions now. Sanctions work to hurt Iran. Sanctions won't stop this nuclear program. The only thing that will stop the nuclear program will be the United States militarily taking out that nuclear program. It's happened before. In Iraq, a nuclear facility was taken out in the 80s. In Syria, a nuclear facility was taken out. In Libya, a nuclear program was halted. We've done this before, and Iran for over 20 years has violated every UN resolution, every deadline they've been given, they've violated. They are clearly on the march to have nuclear weapons, and so many that no nation could ever turn them back. We could see a jihadi power, which is a Shia, that's Iranian. There are two forms of Islam, Sunni and Shia. Sunni is the Islamic State. Shia is Iran. Iran right now is fighting the fight of the Battle of Tikrit against the Islamic State because the Shia Muslims hate the Sunni Muslims and they want to destroy them too. Iran is on the march right now, and this is a religious goal for them. They believe that by bringing this destruction about, that they will usher in their, what they call the 12th Imam, and that's their religious leader, and then they believe that the religion of Islam will dominate the entire earth. We think that sounds far-fetched. It's not even in our capacity to think that any nation would want to do something like that, but that is the belief of the Iranians. And Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, in order to win a battle, you need to know yourself and you need to know your enemy. And here in the United States, we are being stripped of knowing anything about our own country's history, our positive history. All we ever hear is the negative history about the United States. But we also are stripping ourselves of truly understanding who this enemy is, so that every time we see a despicable terror attack, our president says something like, Islam is a religion of peace. He will say that, for instance, with the Jewish kosher market that was attacked in France, he'll say that these were just random people killing other random people. That's not true at all. These are people who are clearly targeting Jews, but anyone who is not of their religious faith. It is the absolute faith of intolerance. That's what radical Islam is, an intolerant faith. And what we have to do is defeat this idea of this intolerant faith. And President Obama, for some unknown reason, doesn't want the American people to know what the true motivations are of the Iranian dictator. I can't imagine for a moment that our president has not been briefed on what the religious motivations are behind the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. But at this point, what I would say to you, from what I have read and what I have observed and from the briefings that I've had, no one knows the thoughts and intentions of a person's heart, but from the words and rhetoric of President Obama and from his actions, they line up very clearly in a pattern to demonstrate two things. President Obama, throughout his presidency, has lifted up the agenda and advanced the agenda of radical Islam, and at the same time, he's cut the legs out of our main ally, Israel. That's just an objective determination of what the fruit has been of President Obama's rhetoric and his actions. And it will come, I believe, with deadly consequences if Iran obtains a nuclear weapon. So I want to thank you so much for having me on tonight, and we'll plan to do this again soon. But I invite people to come and join me at Michele Bachmann at my Facebook, my Twitter. Go to MicheleBachmann.com, MichelePack.com, Team Bachmann, the different websites that are out there. Google me and come and join my sites, and you can get more regular updates.
Thank you so much, Michele Bachmann. And if you are in the Naples, Florida area, join the Eagle Forum's 35th annual luncheon. Michele Bachmann is their keynote speaker, along with Phyllis Schlafly. That's tomorrow, March the 13th. For more information, go to eagleforum.org. Michele Bachmann, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.